People are still coming in, but I'll do a little introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session. This is the first one of these sessions that we're doing. So thank you very much for joining us. My name's Katie Thistleton, and I'm hosting this because I am a journalist. That's what I trained to do. That's what I wanted to be since being really, really young. And I did an NCTJ, which is a qualification that you do if you want to be a journalist. And I'm sure that'll come up at some point in the next hour. But I'm also a DJ on Radio 1 now. So I'm a journalist in a different sort of way to how I thought I would be. I host a show called Life Hacks, which is on this afternoon on Radio 1 from 4 o'clock. And it's a show basically all about life, just what it says on the tin. It's about emotional well-being, physical well-being, whatever is going on in the world, that sort of thing. So if you have listened to it before, you'll know all about it. If you haven't, join us this afternoon. Why don't you text in, get involved? And today we have three amazing guests joining this session to talk about their experiences of working within journalism. We're going to get into the good, the bad, the ugly of the industry, and we're going to find out all about the different roles that are out there if you have got a passion for telling a story, for being a bit of a storyteller. So join us on our panel today. We have, and guys, you might as well put your cameras on when I say your name, Calum Leslie, who I'm sure you will recognise. You'll recognise his name, you'll recognise his voice if you're a Radio 1 listener, because he is currently working as a senior broadcast journalist for BBC Newsbeat. Hi, Calum.
Hello.
We've got Kash. Yeah, very good. We've got Kash Jones, who is a former BBC journalism scheme trainee and a current BBC journalist. Hello, Kash.
Hello, hello.
And we've got Naomi Baker, who is the previous winner of the Young Photography of the Year award and currently represented by Getty Images, which you'll recognise if you like to look at photos of celebrities like me. Hello, Naomi.
Hi.
If you've got a question for any of our panelists throughout this session, guys, just use the Q&A function and send them in at any time during the session, and we're going to do our best to get through as many as we can at the end. But I think the best place to start is just to find out a little bit more about your job roles and what they actually mean. So Kash, going to start with you. You are currently working as a BBC journalist. Tell us what that involves. What is a typical day of working in a BBC newsroom like? And you might want to sort of give us a typical day pre-COVID, because it's probably a bit weird at the moment and not what it's usually like.
There'll just be a lot of Zoom calls at the moment if it was not pre-COVID.
No, and last year you were like, didn't know what Zoom was, and now it's
literally now I'm a Zoom expert. Even my mum's always on to me about Zoom. But so like pre-COVID, I was at two teams. So I was based at Victoria, Derbyshire, then I also moved to BBC Minute. So at Victoria, Derbyshire, it was very I was a former trainee, so walking into that environment, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit tense at first because it was quite a high kind of profile news program. So day to day, you walk in and then basically have a morning meeting. You have around 7, 8, 9 members of the team there, and you pick like 4 main stories. Of those 4 main stories, could be from social media, can be from the, whatever's going on the news cycle, can be from anywhere in the world. And you literally then got to find case studies and contributors for that story. So that's when it gets a bit technical now, because a lot of contributors or the stories, they're quite sensitive stuff now. So you kind of have to kind of find the best ways to kind of reach out and speak to them. But then there's also this deadline, because you kind of got to do it within, say, 9 hours of the program going out. So it was, at times it was very intense, but I've learned so much during that process, just kind of having to talk to someone online. It's not like you're asking for £5. You're literally asking, can you share your most kind of personal story or like a moment in your life where you felt vulnerable? And it's not over the phone. In this case, it was to the world. It was on that main BBC 2 at the time. So you learn as you go along. That I think the beauty of kind of the world of journalism, because you make so much phone calls a day, you literally learn from the previous phone call. So if you kind of use the closed question in the first phone call, the second phone call, okay, let me open it up more now so I can make them feel more comfortable. So I think just during that natural development, you kind of find a natural flow. So once you've kind of got the contributor and the case study, then you've got to do a brief. And then once the brief goes to the presenter, so all presenters are different styles, different energies, different vibes. So for example, I was at Radio 2 for a while with Jeremy Vine, and you'd give him like a 3-page document and he would just read it in like 30 seconds. I've never seen something so crazy. He would just take it in so fast. Like, I'm dyslexic, so that will take me a good 2 hours, but he just whacked it in fast. And when he talks on air, it's like, yeah, you just got him straight away. He literally, his comprehension skills, take the knowledge and pull it out, and that was amazing. But other presenters prefer more bullet point based stuff. So just short, concise, straight to the point, and they can kind of expand their own creativity from it. So then it's learning presenter style. So there's so much kind of little things you do day to day, but as you kind of go along the journey and things just kind of open up. And then, yeah, so that was Victoria, Derbyshire. Then I moved to BBC Minute, and that was more news bulletins. So that was going around the world. So that was around in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. It literally went everywhere apart from the UK. So my friend literally rang me one time, like, oh, I heard your voice. He was in Ghana. I was like, oh, that's cool. But in the UK, no one cares. But around the world, everyone cares. I was like, okay, cool. So I can't go to Ghana now. I've made it. So yeah, so yeah, that it was exciting. It was quite intense because it was like 10-hour shifts every half an hour. You're doing a bulletin, and you have to bring the energy because you're coming off the back of radio shows. So it's, even though they're waking up at midday, I might be on the back end of a night shift. This could be my last bulletin, but I need to give it that energy as if it's someone just waking up first thing. So that was intense. But I say intense as in, it might sound like that in a negative way, but intense is good. Like, it's a buzz, it's a drive, it's motivation, it keeps you going. So that's kind of what I mean by when I say it's intense. And yeah, that's kind of like day-to-day life as a BBC journalist. It changes every day though. So like during COVID, I did on a documentary, which was a completely different style of journalism. So yeah, it just evolves each way. Hope I'm not waffled on for too much.
Yeah, no, not at all. It's fascinating. Yeah, just sounds so exciting and thrilling. And, you know, I'm sure that that's probably what's attracted a lot of people to this Zoom call today, is that they want a career like that is that good side of intense. Like you say, a lot of people skills involved is what I got from you there. You know, whether that's contributors or presenters, you gotta be a chameleon in a way, haven't you? You gotta adapt yourself to all these different people and get them to like you and get them to trust you and all that sort of thing. Amazing. Brill. Well, Calum, Newsbeat, of course, is just brilliant and is on the hour every hour on Radio 1 and 1Extra Nation Network. And it's usually quite short, no longer than 2 minutes, unless, of course, it's the 15-minute special at 5:45. Can you tell us about how you decide which stories make the cut when it's only a couple of minutes like that? And how does it differ, sort of doing the news for the radio compared to doing it for TV and online?
Yeah, so it's really tough to try to work that out because we've got a lot of different things to think about. Obviously doing news for Radio 1, 1Extra, and during the pandemic, the Asian network as well, our audience is younger and a lot of the time, but not completely, maybe less interested in following the news in minute detail. They're maybe not listening to long news programs as much. So we've got a balance between finding stories that our audience are interested in. That's obviously really important, things that affect their life. You know, during the pandemic, for instance, lots of the chat around COVID rules, if you look across most coverage, maybe didn't focus on things like nightclubs or can you still go on dates or that sort of stuff. And we would maybe in that case focus a bit more on that than other parts of the BBC because that's what our listeners are asking us. That's what they want to know. So you have to do stuff that our audience is interested in. That's definitely a big part of it. And we get that from, you know, audience research we have done, but also what are people texting in on? What are the stories that they're messaging us on or DMing us on? What are the things that they're getting engaged in? And that's a good indication sometimes of what they want to hear more about, questions they've got, all the rest of it. The other side of it is that there are a lot of news stories that are just really important and significant in how the country's run or decisions that affect people's lives, or even, you know, around the world, big events that affect things. I'm thinking like the US presidential election last year where Joe Biden became the president. It might not be something some of our listeners, not all of them, but some of them are that involved and interested in, but it could have big consequences for their life because it might affect things like climate change decisions in the future, which is going to affect everybody or whatever it might be. So there's some stories that we maybe know it's not their top priority, but it's a sort of public service duty to give them the information so they are informed enough about big events that are happening in the world. And then we have this other thing that, you know, Kash mentioned it there about coming off the back of radio programs. We're really conscious that on Radio 1 and 1Extra, these are music stations, they have a sound. You can't have a news bulletin that sounds like it's dropped into another radio station for 2 or 3 minutes. So we've also got to try to make it feel like it fits in with the rest of the station. And that can be really difficult if you've got, you know, this week or last week, we had a story one day leading on the conflict between Israel and you know, how do you make that top story feel in keeping with the theme of the station, but also not trivializing something or making it feel a bit of an odd shift in tone. So those are the things, I think, the main things we have to think about. What are people interested in? What do they maybe need to know a bit about? And then how do we make it fit in with the stations that we're broadcasting on?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, from our side, it's something that we have to remember to consider as well, because we'll be sort of messing around doing something really stupid, and then we'll go into the news and the headline, I'll be like, oh my God, that's terrible. You know, it'll be something really awful. And, you know, you've got to, that tone is hard, isn't it? Like you say, to kind of keep it upbeat and interesting for young people, but also get the tone right when obviously these, you know, terrible things going on in the world, people need to know about it. Thanks, Calum. Naomi, photography, such an important part of journalism. A picture tells 1,000 words, they say. What's it like working as a photographer, and a sports photographer you are in particular, aren't you? So tell us about a day in your working life.
So no day is ever the same. I think that's what I love about it so much. But also, your kind of day starts the day before, when you're preparing for everything and you're researching, and you're kind of Googling maybe what game you're going to, and if there's like a story around there where you can focus on. So for example, if a manager's a bit in the hot seat, and you know, if he loses, then he might, you know, he's going to be a story, and it's kind of thinking about stuff like that. But yeah, no day is ever the same. So for example, this last week I was doing golf, and then next week it's rowing, and then back for football, and then Tokyo later on in the year. And so it's always changing, and that's what I love so much about it. But a lot of it is preparation and making sure that you're ready for what you're going to, and just being aware of news stories around what you're going to and how best you can kind of prepare for that. But I think in terms of like a picture saying 1,000 words, I think even through COVID, you know, that's been such an important part as well. And a lot of our photographers did a lot more news during that time, but just because right at the start, sport came to a standstill. So we were all very, you know, like, how can we help? How can we help the company almost, you know, still work, and still how can we tell this story of like the time we're in. So I did a lot of news in my local area, which is totally different than sport. But then luckily that sort of came back in time. But I worked on a project with the GB rowing team, so I documented them training at home, which is also totally different than anything I'd done pre-COVID. You know, you'd never, and they'd also be at training bases, they'd never be at home training. So that was quite interesting as well, kind of doing that. So I think just being prepared for any situation, but also how you can tell that story and the best way you can tell it, and just being prepared for it, really.
Amazing, sounds great. And you know, sometimes I think perhaps people might forget about, when you think of journalism, maybe you think of an obvious somebody writing for a newspaper sort of thing, and you might not think about all these other bits that go into it, but the photos are so incredibly important. I mean, especially in the world of sport, actually, you know, there's iconic photos that have been taken at sporting events, haven't they? And that must be a real buzz when you get a shot that is just like incredible and ends up everywhere. Thanks Naomi. Kash, let's talk a little bit more about the journalism apprenticeship scheme. I think the BBC is brilliant at having these. I started on a production management training scheme, and I think they're amazing for getting young people into the BBC and into their sort of first job. That lasted 2 years, and you're in the newsroom for a lot of it. You've already described that kind of, you know, intense environment. Is there a lot of pressure to come up with news stories every day when you're on that training scheme and really impress?
Good question. I think with the training scheme, I think everyone around you knows kind of you're the trainee. So there's an element of, yeah, there's pressure, and it will mimic the kind of the real kind of news output, but it's more in a way where it's still got kind of a safety blanket. So they allow you to, they give you that room, they give you that extra 30 seconds you'll need to kind of write a story or kind of speak to an editor to help you kind of liaise with what kind of heading you should go for, or maybe this line here doesn't really quite work. I feel like, because my background was, I done sports science at uni, so I have no NCJ. I literally just kind of, I feel like I'm winging it now, to be honest, in terms of like my journalistic career. I've just learned.
We all do, Kash. I think we all think we're all winging it. Don't worry.
I used to be the kid outside Westfield, like asking people random questions, and then one day I was like, "Oh, I'm at the BBC," and I said, "Yeah, it's completely been a whirlwind journey." But I think having that background of kind of just being, in a sense, fearful and probably not realizing what I was doing, I always put myself in environments where I was allowed to fail, because I feel like that's when the best, you learn quicker that way, because you kind of learn from those mistakes. So having that kind of background mentality, that's kind of helped me in the newsroom, because I now know that when if I make a mistake or if something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. Like, that's the only reason I can improve. That's how I can adapt. That's how I can do a better second run of whatever I was meant to be doing the first time. So I think a lot of it is just mindset. I think I learned a lot during COVID, and like how I look at life. And I think looking at the glass half full and not half empty has probably changed a lot of how I've kind of transitioning through my journalistic career. So I think when anyone from who's like watching this now has a chance to be in a newsroom, like don't have that pressure of, oh, what if it goes wrong, or what if I mistake? If it goes wrong, so like let's go, let's move, let's learn, let's adapt, let's see how we can make it right the next time. I think just having that kind of productive mindset, that will just make more content come, and it'll all run so naturally without even realizing.
That's brilliant. Just a reminder, guys, keep your questions coming in. If you've got any questions for Calum or Kash or Naomi as we're chatting, get them into Q&A function and we're going to answer those in a little bit. Kash, tell us a bit more about how you sort of get onto that production scheme and that training scheme, and sort of what skills and experience do you think you do need? Because as you say, you didn't previously have a journalism qualification. What does it involve?
So for me, I think I was naturally doing journalistic stuff without realizing I was being a journalist. So I mentioned before how I was doing like videos outside Westfields and McDonald's, and then I was working in retail at the time. So then I started writing articles for like the in-house. So it was an in-house article which kind of just showcase skills that people were doing within the company. Then on the side to that, I started doing community radio. So I was naturally picking up all these kind of different traits, which was actually me kind of slowly becoming a journalist. So I was on BBC Get In, I saw the application, and it was like, and all the kind of different things they asked for. So, oh, I'm doing this. Oh, I'm doing that as well. Oh, wait, that as well. So naturally, it was like everything just began to click. And I think kind of going back to what I said before, when I went to the interview process now, because I didn't have that much of a journalistic background, but I had all these kind of mistakes I've made when I was kind of doing stuff, I had stuff to speak about. And it gives you kind of a way to show your personality. When you can say, oh, I've done an interview and I forgot to turn the camera on, as much as like it's an embarrassing thing to say, it allows you to showcase personality, you've got charisma, and also you learn from a situation which you can kind of move forward and doing. So I think in terms of like, if you want to go out and create and be a journalist, just do it. Like we've all got social media, all these things that you feel like you're not even doing, which is journalistic, is actually you going out and being inquisitive, asking people questions, communicating. Just like proactive listening is a massive thing. Just actually active listening. You can even practice this kind of thing with listening to your friends. Like, are they actually okay, or what's really going on? It's like all these. I think sometimes I overcomplicated what a journalist was and what they must do, because all I saw was like Primetime 6 or the 10, was just a guy there standing saying, "Yep, so tonight on news." But when I kind of look beyond that, it's so much more personal, so much more lighter. It's so much more. There's a beauty in speaking to people and find out information, which can be done on so many different platforms and there's so many different teams at the BBC. So you can really find a team that works for you to showcase the best of your creativity through sharing someone else's story.
I think you're totally right. I mean, I used to think, oh, I've got to write for a newspaper and that's all there is. And then a bit like you, sort of started doing community radio, realised there's a big world out there. And then the type of journalism I'm doing now, sort of making documentaries and doing a radio show that kind of has news in it, you know, I wouldn't have even considered that would have been being a journalist, but it is. There's lots of different ways of doing it, isn't there? And I love that you were making those videos. And like you say, I bet there's loads of people watching this who, you know, they are sort of being journalists in the day-to-day life, being storytellers. I mean, I always say, I look back at who I was as a teenager. I never shut up talking. I was always telling stories. I was always gossiping or saying, oh, I saw this, I've read about this, da, 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 da. And I was obsessed with people and their problems and how they, you know, I was like, got the magazines and got straight to the agony aunt pages. And I'm like, well, that's just life hacks, you know. And now I look back and I think, that's exactly what I do now. It's amazing how that kind of all works out. So I bet there's loads of people watching this who already do it. And like you say now, God, anyone, you can just have your own podcast, make your own videos, write your own blog. You don't even need anyone to be watching or listening to it. You can just, but like you, Kash, you can go to those interviews then and say, oh, I've done this, and that time I forgot to press record, but I've learned from that. And everyone will do that at some point in the career. And Kash, you just mentioned BBC Get In, and I've just been reliably informed you can follow them on Instagram and Twitter, and they post a lot of BBC entry-level schemes. And yeah, myself and Kash both started out on the scheme like that. So yeah, check them out because they are brilliant. Calum, tell us a little bit about what your route into journalism was and how you got your job.
Yeah, so a little bit different. I went to uni and studied something that wasn't, like Kash said, with him, wasn't journalism related. When I was at uni, I did a bit of student newspaper stuff that you can sometimes do, and then went and did a postgrad in journalism, which had the sort of NCTJ qualifications and the things you're talking about there. Came out of that and did get in on a BBC trainee scheme, but rather than the apprenticeship one, it was one on post-uni, sort of, so a bit for if you're a bit older, type of trainee scheme that was around politics specifically. I think the biggest thing, you know, different routes in, we've got people in our office that went through apprenticeship schemes and are now working in the newsroom, other ones that went to uni, some people that went straight into work. I think what Kash said that's really important though is that the skills are sort of there regardless of how you get in. And I don't think actually matters too much which one of those routes you pick. Some people want to go to uni and have that experience. Some people would rather get straight into work. And I don't think there's a better or worse way to do it. I think the biggest thing, and again, it was touched on by Kash, is just to get into newsrooms. So if you talk from a radio point of view, there's not a commercial radio station, community radio station, even a BBC local station in the UK that would not be happy to have help in their newsroom. I think we have this idea, maybe before we're in them, that they're these sort of quite scary places and it's really hard to get in. And it might be tricky in some places to get jobs ultimately, but they're all desperate for enthusiastic people that are keen and want to be journalists to help them out. So I would say, if you want to do radio, or even just if you want to feel what a newsroom's like, the biggest thing, whether you're on an apprenticeship scheme, whether you're even late at school or uni, is get into newsrooms and get to local radio. And you're probably not going to get paid for it at first. You're probably going to be in there just making cups of tea and watching people and doing little bits here and there. But it's the best way to get in, because once you've got that experience, you can go to interviews, you can apply for uni schemes or college schemes with examples of things you've done. And I think that's the same thing that is the most important thing. So, I did uni route, other people don't, but the biggest thing is getting that experience. And I did that, when I was at uni, I was doing football reports for my local radio station that was great fun. You're not getting paid for it, but I'm getting into the football and getting to watch that and learning to be live on the radio. You can make those mistakes, you can learn from the people around you. I think that's the most important thing. There's lots of great ways to get into journalism, but getting into newsrooms for a bit of experience is so invaluable when it then comes to applying for jobs.
Oh, amazing. You'll do a lot of vox pops.
Yeah.
I bet there's people who are already...
And find out what people think from anything. Yeah, exactly.
I used to have to go, I was doing some stuff for my local community radio station, and I have to go into the town centre and get people to talk to me. And half the time they just didn't want to talk to me. It's the hardest part, I think, of like being a trainee journalist, having to do those vox pops, but as how you cut your teeth. And my mum, this was a naughty thing I used to do. My mum worked at an office in that town centre, and I used to just go and get her, because she'd have an opinion on anything. So I'd be like, Mum, can you just tell us the opinion on this? And no one ever noticed, but the same woman was always on the news bulletins. So I was like, please, Mum, no one will speak to me. Will you come and do this vox pop? Naomi, tell us about how you get into sort of being a photographer for anybody who wants to do that. And also, if anyone's watching this and thinking, yeah, I really do want to do that, but I don't have any fancy kit. Do you need that? Or a bit like we were saying with just going out and doing your own stuff, can you just use your phone and start there?
I definitely think you can. I think, it's exactly the same thing. You've just got to get out there. That's the best way to do it, because you learn so much at everything you go to as well. I think a lot of people start out and they think, oh, I want to go to, the Premier League, or they always pick sort of like the top flight or something. But a lot of people start right at the bottom, the grassroots, and they're the easiest thing to get into as well. And teams, you could contact your local team and they will love it if they have a photographer come. Everyone loves having a picture of themselves for their Instagram or whatever. So, you're never going to get knocked back at going to a game at that level. And I think as long as you're going, you're learning something new every single time. And I still learn something new every time I go and shoot something. And I think you've just got to get out there. And it's the same thing with uni. That's the route I took, but I didn't really know what area I wanted to be in. And it was when I was at uni, that's when I realized that I wanted to just do sport in my final year. So, but then again, you don't need to. And I have a lot of people say like, oh, do I need to go to uni? Which one would you help me pick? And I think as long as you love it and as long as you get out there, as long as you've got a portfolio to show that you've made the effort to go, and sometimes, you don't get paid for it, but when you have the pictures, then you can start getting paid for it, because, people see, oh, they're good at this, and, I want to hire that person. Or so it's kind of picking that route. But I also think that kind of weeds out the people that don't want to do it, because if you love it that much, you don't really care, and money's not really a factor at the start, I don't think. So it's just keep going, keep getting out there, and just keep trying stuff and getting to whatever event you can, because also you meet so many people at each different thing as well, and you don't know who you're going to be sat next to on pitch side, or who you get talking to and what leads they might have. They might have an internship coming up. So it's just getting your face out there, getting your name out there, and just keep photographing whatever you can, really.
Amazing. And we are, you know, good at that now. Everyone's always sort of taking photos, and most people have a smartphone that takes pretty good quality photos, haven't they? Naomi, it must be quite a hard style of photography if you're, you know, capturing people who are moving all the time. I always feel for sports journalists in general when they're trying to sort of chat to sports people at the end of a game when they're, you know, absolutely shattered and not really with it because they've been running around for an hour and a half. And it must be hard trying to capture photos in those moments when there's a lot going on and everybody's moving. Do you need sort of a special skill for that? And how do you kind of cope with the pressure of trying to capture those crucial moments when someone runs over the finish line or scores a goal?
I think it's just being prepared, and like you said with equipment, I think you can use your phone, I think, but also when you get to sort of a certain level, you just can't, and you do need professional equipment. But definitely when you're at the start, just use whatever you can get hold of. You can get quite cheap cameras and, you know, like short lenses, but kind of if you're going to a game with that, then just keep that in mind, and maybe don't sit in one spot for the whole time, you know, move around and get a different angle, get a bit closer, go to the bench and things like that. So I think it's just keeping that in mind, but you just gotta be prepared for it, really. And I think, so I have sort of 4 cameras on me at a football game, for example, just because they've all got different lengths. So, and then if something does come close to you, then you're prepared for it with a certain lens or vice versa. But it's just preparing the night before and making sure you've got everything for anything that could happen at the next sort of event you're at. And it's just being aware of, you know, what could happen in front of you and making sure you've got everything you need for it.
Preparation is key. I think that is true of all parts of journalism for sure, isn't it? Doing your research, knowing what you're going into. Calum, on that note, you know, there's a lot of there's a spotlight on the news to get things right, and that accuracy is so important. I mean, especially at the BBC, there's always somebody waiting for for you to slip up and perhaps get something wrong. When you're sort of tipped off with a story, how do you sort of make sure that everything is accurate and, you know, you can run with it and publish it or broadcast it?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think become more complicated with social media, probably, because a lot of the time social media is a great resource. It's a great thing we can get people to talk to us from. We can get an idea of what people are thinking or experiences they might have had, but it's ultimately just lots of people that are able to tweet something that they think might be true or might have happened. So there's a few things. I mean, if you get a story where you want to confirm whether it's happened or not, say it's something about a well-known person that might have happened to them, or there's always the thing of who's it coming from, the information, first of all. So it's really basic stuff of, is it coming from official sources? Is it coming from a police statement? Is it coming from a court statement? If it involves someone that's maybe a singer or an actor, can you get in touch with their agents that are able to confirm it? You know, there's those sort of people that, you know, if they say it, then you'd be able to report that they are saying X, Y, and Z. A big thing that happens now, though, is that you'll see a lot of chatter on things like Twitter that something's happened, and it can be really tempting to sort of think, well, can we report that that's trending? Can we report that that lots of people are talking about this? And it's really tempting sometimes, especially if it's a good story. But I think it makes it all the more important that you're standing up with, like I say, those people that that you think are reliable. You've then got, in a place like the BBC, we've got lots of experts. We have a correspondent, a specialist reporter for almost every topic you can think of. So at Newsbeat, if something happens and we know that we can't confirm it, does the specialist correspondent, if it's in health or in entertainment or in education, do they know more about it? Does that team who are working on that subject area every day maybe know who we could phone? So you often ring them and ask if they've had it confirmed, or there's maybe people that we could phone to get it confirmed. And then there's another thing that happens a lot. You'll get a lot of PR agencies that want to get their stories, products, people out there, and they'll be sending loads of emails. I mean, you guys will know the amount of emails you get every single day saying that there's a great guest or a great idea, or there's research that they've done that says this, this, and this about what people think. And a lot of the time, you know, that's what PR people's job is to make it sound as exciting as possible. A lot of the time you have to take a step back, look into the actual research, and sometimes it is a good story, but a lot of the time it is a product or a person that's kind of being promoted, and you have to really think, right, what is actually new here? Who's benefiting from it if we do run it? You know, that's a question I ask a lot, and a lot of the guys in the office will ask, is if we put this in the news, who does it benefit? And if sometimes nobody in particular, sometimes it's just a good news story, but other times you can then think, well, this company or this product or this person is getting more benefit from this than it is interesting, if that makes sense. So there's lots of different stuff to think about when you're, it depends on the type of story, but I think biggest thing would be, in the world of social media, just take a step back when you see something that's trending and really see who's saying it and are they reliable. And I think if you ask those questions, you very rarely go wrong when you get stuff there. But it's tough. It's really difficult now with things like Twitter and all that stuff.
Yeah, things can go completely. I mean, TikTok's just made me think I've got all these things wrong with me that I didn't think I had wrong with me, because things go pranks on there just and even, you know, with years of sort of experience of that, I still go, what, is that true? Is that it? And then it's not. But I think it comes with experience as well, doesn't it? It comes with years of kind of, you know, I did years in kids TV, and that makes you very scared to ever get anything wrong or not have sort of duty of care for a contributor or anything like that. So I think I'm always on the other end of being too careful. And I think you always have a manager, a supervisor, somebody to sort of refer up to as well, don't you, in those situations, who's got experience of that. Brilliant. Well, before we get to Q&A, because we've got loads of questions coming in, keep them coming in. I just want to ask you all one question, and that is, what is the one piece of advice you would give to somebody who wants to get into journalism, into what you're doing? So I'll start with you, Kash, if you've got something. I can see you sort of doing a thinking face.
No,
Yeah.
I would just say just start creating. Like I think we said before, like you got podcasts, you can do community radio, you can start writing. It doesn't have to be on a massive platform. I think someone told me one piece of advice which was beautiful. It's not about how many people see it, it's about who sees it. It could be one person who can see that piece of article or see a photo you've taken or hear a radio bulletin, and it's like, wow, and they can be the one person who unlocks a branch of opportunities for you. So for like, don't be scared to make mistakes, go out there and just create. There's a beauty in creation, because in your creating process, you're not just kind of presenting information, you're learning, you're researching, you're discovering, you're finding out new ways about yourself, like what you actually enjoy doing. It might not even be for you, but the only way to kind of find out if this is what you love is when, like we said, you got no money in your account and you're thinking, oh, I've got a great story here, and you got to kind of just walk around just asking everyone, can you spare 5 minutes please? So like, you really find how much you love it when you go out there and create. So literally just create and create.
Great advice, very good advice. Naomi, what about you?
I mean, literally the same. Just get out there, just keep going to stuff, keep going to events. And I mean, sometimes you might not be in maybe like the right mindset to go, but I feel like they're the days where sometimes you learn the most, and you can kind of learn a lot about yourself by just going out there as well. And you're not necessarily always learning about the camera, but there's so many elements to it. And I think just keep going and just keep taking pictures and just trying new things, and also don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that was one thing I thought at the start. I was like, oh, should I reach out to this person? I'm not sure. Are they gonna reply to me? I don't know. But if you know, what are they gonna say? Like, no, I can't. Like, I don't want to get back to you. So I think you just got to keep trying and just reaching out to people and just asking questions, even if you think it's the silliest questions. A lot of people have probably asked that before you. So I think just ask for help and just keep going out there.
You might as well try. I used to guess people's email addresses at the BBC, because you know, often it's first name dot last name at bbc.co.uk. So I used to listen to like when there's a programme Radio 4 and it says who it was produced by, or you see the credits on a TV show, I'd be like, oh, I'll just email that person and ask if they want to get a coffee. And yeah, people are busy, you know, we're all busy and we all get emails like that, and it's not, you can't always go back to everybody, but who knows, somebody might, and they might help you out. Calum, what about you? What would your piece of advice be?
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Because I'm sure Naomi and Kash and you know that when you're in the situation asking for advice, you almost want there to be this golden secret that nobody's told you about how you get into journalism. And the reality is there's not a secret bit of advice that you're going to be told that will change everything. It is just these things these guys are talking about. I think like a couple of quick things, if it's news particularly that you want to get into, if it's radio or TV, you know, watch and listen to lots of radio and TV news, watch different stations, listen to different programs, different presenters, think about if you like it, if you don't like it, why do you like it and not like it, you know, have opinions on what news should sound like in your opinion. You might be right, you might not always be right, but listen to lots of different stuff so that you get a sense of what different radio stations do and how they sound and all that sort of stuff. I think a really specific bit of advice is get used to phoning people, probably, because now we don't phone very much, right? You've got instant messages, you've got DMs, we've got voice notes. If you want to sort your bank, you've got an instant chat, and if you're, I think, 18, 19, 20 now, you're not actually picking up a phone to people you don't know very often at all. And that's still the most effective way to do journalism in a newsroom, is to phone people rather than email or text them or whatever. So, and I know that it can be quite scary. I remember hating phoning people when I left uni. Really hated picking up the phone to someone I didn't know. And I was lucky I got a job in a call centre for 6 months, and that kind of got me out of that. But I think even if you've not got that, get into the habit. If you need to phone your bank, phone them. If you need to get in touch with the bank, phone them. If you need to get in touch with the doctor, phone them. And it sounds silly, but just get in the habit of picking up the phone to people you don't know and talking to them, because that is, when you get to the point where you're chasing stories, press officers are not always going to respond to emails. They're going to need someone to get on the phone and speak to them. Like Kash was mentioning earlier, you're not going to persuade people to come on and share really intimate parts of their life over text or email very often. It will require a conversation where you can explain how you'll look after them and take into account their different concerns. So the whole bunch of things you could say, but I would say get used to picking up the phone, because we just don't do it now very much, and it's still really important in a newsroom. And it's really noticeable when you get people in work experience or whatever, and they're comfortable picking up the phone. They're I think that really stands out, and I think that would be the one skill I'd make sure you've got nailed.
Why are we so scared of it though? I'll be honest with you, Calum, I'm allergic to phone calls.
Yeah.
Have you seen that meme, and it's like a dog and someone's holding a phone to its ear, and it's like when your mum says you're old enough to make your own doctor's appointment now, and it's like I am so alert. My phone rings, I'm like, who is ringing? That could be a text. Send me a text. Don't phone me. But you're right. I remember being so intimidated with early jobs of picking up the phone in the office and talking to people. You feel like everyone's listening to you, and they're not, and they don't care. But yeah, millennials and below, millennials and Gen Z, we do not like phone calls for some reason. We're completely allergic to it. Brilliant advice though, everyone. I think it's really telling that you've all said something about, just getting out there and doing it, and you're all very experienced in this. And I think anyone you ask who is very experienced in journalism would say the same thing. So that's pretty telling. I think that it says that's the most important thing, is going out there, getting that experience, meeting people, all that kind of thing. We've had loads of questions in, so thank you everyone who sent them in. Keep them coming as well. We've got one for Kash here from Zoe, which is a good question. It says, how did you know that journalism was for you? I'm also a sports science grad, and changing into a more creative career is pretty daunting.
What was the question, sorry?
It's, how did you know that journalism was good for you? I'm also a sports science grad, and changing into a more creative career seems pretty daunting.
Ooh, how do I know? Do I know now? No, I'm joking. Of course I do. It's naturally, it's just I'm very much kind of, this might just be personal to me, but I'm very much I run off my instincts and what feels right and where I get most satisfaction. And when I started looking at the life of a journalist, it just felt right, because I was connecting with people. There's so much what I thought I could do to journalists and offer to the world, which inspired me to kind of go down this route. You can recreate social impact, social change, hold people to account, share vulnerable stories, and share positive stories as well. Like, there's so much which enlisted with my personality, which made it feel more right for me. Don't get me wrong, sports science it's a great degree. Like, I was thinking being a PE teacher, so that there's more benefits. There's benefits on that side as well, but benefits on that side as well. But for me, the journalism route just felt natural. It just felt comfortable. Even though there's times where it's very high pressure, you obviously have imposter syndrome, all these kind of different elements, but it just felt right. I felt fulfillment. And I don't know what fulfillment looks like for you personally, but if you instinctively, if it feels right and you're enjoying it, just try. Like, it doesn't have to work, but if you try, like, you will find out if you like it or don't. I still feel like it's at uni, I had a kind of safety blanket because I still had my degree. So if journalism didn't work for me, I still had my degree. I could still kind of go back into the sports field, because that's always going to be there for me, because it was a long and expensive 3 years. So yeah, really make sure you go out there and you just try all these different things, because you'll find something that clicks naturally. Like, I like DJing, but if it wasn't for DJing and my love for DJing, I wouldn't have started presenting, because I met presenters along the way. So literally on the journey, you literally find so many other pockets of stuff that you can enjoy. Like, journalism might not be for you, it might not even be for me in 4 years' time. We don't know how life works, but on this journey, I'm pretty sure you'll find something that you do enjoy, because fulfillment will come. And when you feel that sense sense of, oh, this is right, this feels good. Just hold on to it, run with it, and just keep trying to like just feel that feeling every single day. And that's what I've been doing since. So yeah, I hope that was helpful. If not, I'm sorry.
No, that's really helpful. I think there's so many jobs, isn't there, that you don't, in any industry, this will be the case. You get into you think of the obvious ones, you get into the industry, you're like, oh, there's that might be better suited to me, or there's that looks like a good job. There's so much you just don't even know. And like you say, sometimes you go on a completely different path to what you thought, but it makes perfect sense, and it's fulfilling. Good question from Marine and quite a few others who were asking, what are your tips for applying for work experience when it's so competitive? So anyone who has any tips?
I think showing that you've got enthusiasm for being a journalist and for news. So it's kind of coming back to the thing a little bit about listening to other journalists. So even if you can just show that you listen to whatever you're applying for, first of all, and you know a bit about that station, if you're writing an email or whatever, or you're phoning up, maybe if you want to try and get used to the phone calls, then, try and get that idea of you've been listening to them, you're enthusiastic. Just show enthusiasm, show that you want to be a journalist. So even if it's talking about something you really like, or a person on the station you really like, or something you'd love to learn more from that station does, I think if you can be specific about the place, it will just make whoever's reading that, and they'll get lots of these emails, feel that you've invested a bit of time in their station, their newsroom, their magazine, whatever it is. And that just, again, stands out a little bit more than a generic, I want to be a journalist, would you be able to show me some opportunities? If you've got anything you've done in the past, I know that's tricky if you're trying to get work experience, that's also great. But I think the biggest thing would just be enthusiasm. If you can show that you listen to that station or watch that channel or read that website, and that you've got something you really love about it and something you'd like to learn from it, that will feel really appealing for editors. And it can be quite infectious if you get work experience people that just seem to care about what the thing is that they're trying to get experience on.
I think it's really important to tailor your application, your CV, whatever it is, to that job, isn't it? Not just kind of send out a generic. You can always tell if you're sent a generic email that's gone to loads of people. I think, like say, make it quite specific and make sure you have listened to those programs or watched those programs or read that stuff. You know about it, and you can kind of show that you do. And I think what you say there about, what specifically are you into? Because I think it went in my favour when I came into Radio 1 and had meetings with the Radio 1 bosses, that I was interested in the surgery, which was the sort of mental health advice show that was on before Life Hacks that Gemma Kearney was presenting at the time. I cared about that show and was interested in it. I didn't come in and say, hey, I want to be Greg James. I mean, we all want to be Greg James, don't we? Of course, who wouldn't want to be? But I think the fact that I sort of specifically had a passion for perhaps one of the more niche shows that not everybody was coming in and saying they wanted to do, that maybe helped. So I think, thinking of that particular passion and interest that you've got. Everyone's got something. You think you haven't, but everyone has. You've all got something that you want to get out of bed and get stuck into. Kash or Naomi, do you have anything to add to that about the work experience?
I think just similar. Just tailor it if you can and show an interest in who you're applying for. Or for my industry, for example, talk about photographers' work you like that might be at that company. Or I think just knowing what they're about as well, and just understanding what you're applying for. But I think your passion will also speak for itself, and you're bringing your work to the table or showing them what you can also bring during that work experience or internship, and just showing them why you could be an asset for the future, I think.
Great.
Yeah, and also just like add a little bit of you. I feel like sometimes when we apply for work experience somewhere, because we have this mindset of like what it's meant to be and why it's important, you kind of you kind of hide or mitigate a little bit of your own personality, when really and truly that's what they kind of want. They want that element of you, they want your character, they want your kind of network, your resources. So it's as much as you need this kind of opportunity to unlock more, they still need a bit of you as well. So I kind of remember who you are and what you can bring and what you can offer. I think learning that from the start will help you in the future when you've got to go pitch ideas, because you kind of remember who you are and what you stand for.
Amazing. Great advice, everyone. Lovely question from Jessica here, who says, I'm starting an NCTJ course. Oh, it's just gone away. Where's it gone? She said, I'm starting an NCTJ course in September, and I've become very shy and introverted because of shielding over the last year. Are any of you introverted? And if so, how do you overcome this to have a successful journalistic career? Excellent question, Jessica.
I don't know if I wouldn't say I introverted, but I definitely was pretty shy. at sort of one point earlier on when I was coming out of school, you know, if I'd said that I was going to be speaking on Radio 1 and 1 Extra and doing the news on that, I don't think I'd have believed that when I was 16 or 17 at all. I wasn't the person at school that was standing up and talking in front of everyone. Hate assemblies, hated doing anything that involved standing up in front of a group of people. Even in my mates, didn't really want to be talking with more than 2 or 3 people listening at the one time, which is bonkers because now you run into a studio at the last minute because there's been some breaking news, you throw up a fader and read some news out to however many people are listening. So I can't maybe speak to the specific stuff there, but I think the personality you might think you get with people that are journalists hasn't always been fully formed. And actually, a lot of the stuff about the job makes you feel more confident and gives actually a sort of structure to going and talking. And I think that helps a little bit, or certainly helped me a little bit. So I just say, don't worry about it too much. Just kind of let yourself enjoy the training, let yourself enjoy learning new things, and you'll find something in that NCTG course. Because I remember doing it, because you're doing all the different stuff, radio, online, law, you know, all the different bits. You'll find something you really love, and hopefully that will then make you feel comfortable doing that. And then you've got a bit of structure around talking to more people and kind of getting used to chatting to more folks. So I would say, you know, I was a really shy kid at 16, and it's not quite the same thing, but I think that, I don't know what the other guys think, but I think that does help actually when you get into that environment, and just don't worry about it too much if you can, and try to just, you know, enjoy learning new stuff.
Yeah, I would say not everybody who's working in journalism is sort of jazz hands and, you know, a stand-up comedian. It's not that case at all. There's room for everybody, and there needs to be everybody as well. You know, there might be qualities that you have for that reason that others don't. You might be a really great listener. You might have just really like lovely personal skills when you are chatting to someone and make them feel comfortable. And people would be surprised to hear, Jessica, that I have quite a few introverted qualities. You know, my sort of loudness is a bit of a defense mechanism, really. I was also the kid that was really shy, and then I think I went to secondary school and I just put on this act that I wasn't, as a sort of defense mechanism, and I get quite drained by this job, and I don't know if you guys feel the same, but when you do a job where you are talking, it's very fast paced. I then come home, I don't want to talk, you know, I need to sort of re-energize. So you've got to protect your own energy a little bit, and I think that you maybe just need to keep that in mind, that you might be a bit more drained by the day of journalism than perhaps somebody else might be, but that's fine, and it doesn't mean that you can't do it. So yeah, trust me, there's lots of people we work with who are introverted and lots of people who are extroverted, and there's room for everyone, and you need everyone. Great question here from Daniela, who says, my niche in student journalism is environmental journalism, and that's 99% what I write about. People say not to pigeonhole yourself too early in your career and only write about one type of thing, but they also say to write what you enjoy. It can be confusing, and how would you guys go about finding that balance? That's a really good question, because we have all sort of said something about, oh, what's your passion, go for that. But is that sort of pigeonholing something to be concerned about, would you say?
I say I wouldn't. If you can have your specialist subject that you really enjoy, for example, mine was entertainment. I used to love all things entertainment. Even now, like my phone is like UK gossip. I'm just baked. Like anything that's like a bit saucy, I'm there. But then I walked into the BBC, and then my first team was heavily based on politics, and it was a referendum, and I was like, oh my days, what do I do here? In my head, I was Googling politic terms during meetings to make sure I know what they were talking about. Like whip, okay, what's the whip? I was like, okay, cool, I know what it is now. So like literally, like, it's, even though you have your specialist subject, I would still be open to kind of, if the story does come across, just to try different areas, just so you have that. You never know when you need that one conversation, or you need that kind of one story just to kind of open new opportunities. So yeah, I would keep your specialism. That's always a beautiful thing, because it means you can become an expert within that field, but don't kind of like, I wouldn't say that, say no to other stories that come your way.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I mean, it is tricky, because you're right, we have said both of those things at different points, but it is, like Kash says, just a balance of, it's great to have that specialism, just try to take the opportunities as they come, and don't feel like it's the only thing you could ever do. So yeah, I think it is a tricky balance, but if you can keep it going, that's really useful.
Great. Question here from Angus, who says, considering not all of you did an NCTJ qualification, do you think it's still valuable? So Calum, maybe a good question for you, that one.
I think, look, you definitely don't need them to get into journalism, and we've been chatting about the examples where that's the case. I think if I think about most of the jobs I've applied for, it is either a requirement in some of them. You do sometimes get jobs where they say you need shorthand or law or media law training or all that sort of stuff. It's personal opinion. Personally, I think they're still worth doing if you want to go into that sort of fast-paced news environment, particularly news bulletins, quick turnaround stuff, because the legal training is really important, and there's a lot of ways you can get yourself in trouble really innocently when you're doing news and end up, without wishing to frighten people. Contempt of court can be a prison sentence, and you can do it accidentally. Now, that's a pretty rare occurrence, but journalists do end up in court over reporting the wrong things from a court trial or stuff like that. So that is pretty invaluable if you're going into certain environments, particularly where you maybe going to have to turn around things quickly. And that applies in a local radio station as much as it does in the news at 10. So it's not like that kind of is less relevant when you're only in local radio. It still all applies. In fact, if anything, on local radio, more people involved in the specific thing you're talking about might hear it. It can be worse, actually. So look, it's not essential at all. And if you've not got them, don't feel like it's impossible to get in, because you'll get all that sort of experience when you're in a newsroom. I've found it useful to have some of those bits when I've gone in and kind of aware of things that I wouldn't have been aware of otherwise.
Kash, would you say, have you learned a lot of that kind of on the job? Were you sort of put through training about sort of media law and that kind of thing on the trainee scheme? So I suppose that's maybe another way of doing it, because I suppose there are certain things that you do need to know, like Calum says, the legal side of things is pretty important to sort of have under your belt, isn't it?
No, definitely. I feel like if I knew when I was younger that I wanted to be a journalist, and I knew there was a route where I could do the NTG, I probably would have went down that route, because it just makes natural sense. I feel like because my journey was so different that it just kind of happened the way it happened. But the good thing about the BBC is the training scheme, honestly, is out of 10, it's 11. Like I don't kind of ruin it just in case you go through it and I might ruin your experience, but they put so much effort and time into making it so realistic. And you do media law, then you do kind of like fake kind of scenarios which happen, and it's literally like cameras to everything. So they really put in a lot of time and patience into making sure they minimize any mistakes on air. So that was kind of my kind of first experience with like media law, and it was, I still feel like I'm learning every day. But the beautiful thing about the BBC is that if it ever comes to a stage where you have not got the answers, which does happen a lot, there's always a phone call, Edpol editorial. You can always ring someone who will know the answer to your question. But yeah, I think there's not that, like what Kadim said, there's no direct route. Whatever kind of route naturally prevails, you just kind of follow that path, and you'll get the right training. The BBC, they will look after you, because if not, I'm still here, I'm still hanging on, so it's going good. No court case yet.
It sounds like brilliant training. It really does. Sounds amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't sing the praises of those training schemes enough, because they got me in as well, and I think they're fantastic. Naomi, what about photography? Is there a sort of qualification do you think you need for that, or is it pretty much your portfolio? How good you are at taking the photos?
I think the latter. Yeah, just having a portfolio and showing that you've been out there and you've got it. And I think also like trying to show something different, but I don't think there's really like a specific way in. Like I did photography at school, college, and then uni, so I did quite a few years of it, but it wasn't really until the last year that I wanted to sort of narrow that down just to sport. And there's so many things I learned along the way that I feel like have impacted how I take pictures and how I think about more than just like the goal picture, for example. Like I'll be looking around all the time and trying to find something different, but I think just as long as you've got a portfolio and you've shown an interest in what you're doing, I think that should speak for itself.
Amazing. We've got a question here from Daniela, who says, I really want to be a print journalist, but I've got an A-level in photography and I really enjoy it. With my student newspaper, I use generic pictures from online. Would you recommend, Naomi, taking my own photographs? And do you reckon sort of combining the text with the photography is worth it?
I mean, it's not something I've ever done, but I think if you can take your own pictures, that's great. You'd be saving yourself some work, although maybe creating yourself some more work, but you can probably get to know your story a bit more, I imagine, if you're actually there taking a picture of it. And if you're writing the story, then maybe it's good that you're putting that picture with it, because then you know what you want from that picture, and you can sort of put your story almost in the picture maybe. But yeah, I think there's no harm in doing that. Definitely not. I think that's great to combine both.
Definitely be a triple threat. Can't
be
a bad thing to have more of the skills. And definitely,
no, definitely.
not now. Yeah, definitely not now with the way things are, the way we kind of want everything quite fast, and you know, we do everything great. Daniela asks, journalism in the UK seems to be very London orientated. How would you suggest going about finding work experience and job opportunities outside of the capital?
Well, I think we're quite lucky. It depends which particular type of journalism. If it is radio you want to do, and that's kind of what I've done before, so I'm going to lean on to that a little bit here. We're lucky there's a decent network, maybe not quite as many as there used to be, but still a pretty decent network of commercial radio stations and BBC stations that are all across the UK. And you know, those stations are inevitably the sort of ones that need a bit more help because they maybe not got as many people working on their teams. They might be even more keen to get work experience folk in. That was certainly my experience with someone's up in Scotland, in Stirling and in Dumbarton, where, you know, places outside Glasgow and Edinburgh that needed extra help, extra pair of hands, and you were really invaluable. So I think local radio is a great way at that, commercial or BBC. In fact, if anything, in commercial radio, you're usually getting even more quickly that experience because there's maybe one or two people in the office, you know. So I think that's really a good way in. And I remember thinking when I started in those stations that it does feel a long way from maybe the places you're ultimately wanting to get to. At BBC network stations, it's 5 Live or it's the news channel or it's whatever, but you get the skills, and that is really invaluable. It's kind of almost better to go in and do work experience. Wherever you can get it's brilliant, right? But if you can go in somewhere where you get real hands-on experience, it will stand you in better stead in terms of skills than maybe get in somewhere where you're just watching for the whole day. It's great to do both, don't get me wrong, take every opportunity you get, but I actually think local radio around the UK is probably as invaluable, if not more invaluable, right at the start.
Yeah, and things are definitely getting better, you know. But you know, I remember when I was graduating, and I remember sort of standing at my graduation and seeing all these people, hundreds and hundreds of people same age as me in the same city, getting up to get their degrees in journalism and English and media and TV and film, and thinking, wow, all these people want the same jobs in the same city. I'm never going to get a job, but I did. And I remember my mum saying, you know, oh, the BBC's opening up literally over there where I was graduating in Manchester, you know, you'll get a job there. And I was like, shut up, Mum, you're embarrassing me. But I did, and it, you know, fell on my feet because things are moving, and it is getting a lot less London centric, but still it's the big cities, you know, it's Leeds, it's Manchester, it's still not easy. And I feel your pain with that, but I think, like Calum says, radio, just a brilliant place to, you know, that radio is spread out everywhere, isn't it? And, you know, especially now with so much of it being online as well. I mean, I think the pandemic has made people realize that you can kind of work a bit better from wherever you are. So hopefully things go in the right direction there. Great question here from Kate, who says, should a good journalist be able to put on any issue, whether it's celebrity news, international stories, politics? Great question.
Yeah, I believe, for me personally, when it comes for stories that I may not be as confident on, the story's never really about me. It's always about like the contributor or the person. So I never really see a story as like, as am I the expert here, because I'm not the expert. I'm learning. I'm trying to find the expert voice. I'm trying to find the right person to share the story. So I think it's more just staying. I think you've got to be very careful this stage, because sometimes your social media feed can make one story look one type of way. Like, especially during the election, my story, it just looks completely one side. I was thinking, yeah, this is going to happen. And then when it happened, it was a massive change. So I think it's just learning how to be impartial, taking yourself outside the in and out of the stories, and just trying to find that balanced opinion. And that's kind of how it's helped me kind of navigate my different stories, especially when I wouldn't necessarily feel as confident of approaching that before.
Yeah, I think like Kash says, you can't be an expert on everything. You can't know everything about everything. And actually it's really good if you're able to know, well, I don't know that, so I need to find that out. The skills you learn and what you find yourself doing, I think, and we're all still learning this, I'm still learning this every single day, is how to get across the basic details of something really quickly. And especially with radio bulletins and stuff like that, you do have to do that quite a lot. Something you've just never heard of before happens, and you need to get across the really basic details and get it in a news bulletin in 20 minutes. And I wouldn't worry about being an expert on everything. There will always be things that you're not as good on, the stuff I don't know as much about, and I might turn to somebody in the office and say, listen, you know more about this, is that right? Or can you have a look at that for me? It's totally a good thing to have a team of those different strengths. You should have a basic ability to get across stuff, but you don't need to be the expert on everything, and it's totally fine. I do it every day to say to somebody in the office, this isn't my area that I know much about. Can you read at this? Just make sure I'm not going to make a total idiot of myself on the radio. So, or get it wrong, which is even more important. So I think, yeah, it's fine to ask when you don't know as much.
Mine was pronouncing footballers' names. I'd be like running out of the room and would like 1 second be like, how do you pronounce this name or this team? Or like just run out and scream at somebody in the office and write it down phonetically because I don't know football. So, and I thought, I mean, I will get absolutely, you know, if you said like a massive footballer's name wrong on the radio, everybody, people would let you know about it for sure. Well, it's past, it's time to wrap up, but thank you so much, Calum and Kash and Naomi. You have been brilliant. It's so inspiring to hear you talk, and I think you've given invaluable advice. So I hope everybody watching this feels like they found it really helpful. I'm sorry if we didn't get around to a question, but thank you so much for sending them in, and good luck with your potential future journalism careers. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely Sunday afternoon. Listen to my show.